Welcome back, everyone, to the Real Talk Podcast, episode 19. And on today's episode, we are talking Oscar nominations. They were released a week or so back, but we are ready to talk about them, talk about our snubs, people we feel should have been nominated that weren't, movies we feel that should have been nominated that also weren't, and also get into our predicted winners, actors we're rooting for, actresses we're rooting for, movies we're rooting for, directors we're rooting for, all that good stuff. Also, we have an Ant-Man trailer to recap, as well as box office in general, and then we will be bringing you a review of The Shape of Water, which me and Mike got to see this past weekend. It's up for Best Picture, and we will let you know if we think it should win, and what we thought overall of the movie. But joining me, as always, on today's podcast is Mike Gillis. Mike, what is going on?
What's up, guys? Happy to be back on track. I know we've kind of been a little shaky the last couple of weeks. We had mid-years, and then, that's a lot of stress. But we're hopefully trying our best to get back on schedule here.
Yeah, just to address that, last week we didn't come out with an episode just due to mid-years and studying and all that. And I tried to organize something, but just time just never worked out because, me and Mike were kind of on different schedules sometimes when it comes to school, at least. But we are back. We're ready to talk Oscars. And, Oscars don't come out till, I believe, the end of this month, right? Yeah, so we still have a lot of time, not only to recap nominations, but our goal is to continue seeing movies out for Best Picture. We've both currently seen 3 out of the 8 films nominated, so hopefully we can get that up. Maybe not to a full 8 out of 8, but at least the majority. Try to get a good 5 or 6 in there would be perfect. All right, so with that being said, are we ready to talk some box office?
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, so this past weekend, coming in at number 1 is Maze Runner: The Death Cure, making $21.16 million in its opening weekend. Coming in at number 2 is Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, staying strong, another $16.14 million, dropping 17% from last weekend. Coming in at number 3 is Hostels, making $10.1 million, jumping over 1,000%, but that's because this was its wide release weekend, I believe. Coming in at number 4 is The Greatest Showman, making $9.5 million, dropping 10%. Really shows how strong word of mouth can be when it comes to a movie like this.
Definitely.
And rounding out the top 5 is the Oscar-nominated The Post, making $9.1 million, dropping 22% from last weekend. Mike, just taking a look at the top 5, what stands out?
Well, I feel kind of bad because I know nothing about the Maze Runner series, but it's somehow managed to make its way up to number 1. I'm sure it's because it's already a stable franchise, but, aren't these movies not that great?
Right. The first one, guilty pleasure, I kind of enjoyed. A lot of people have disdain for it because the first one followed the Maze Runner. In the title, it followed that storyline that they were stuck in this maze or whatever. The next few, after they get out in the first one, it starts dealing with, a lot of end-of-the-world stuff. But Littlefinger from Game of Thrones is in it, so I thought that was kind of interesting because he's not in many mainstream movies. This one, actually an interesting story behind it, was meant to be released September of 2016, I believe, over a year and a half ago. But Dylan O'Brien, the lead actor from this movie and the franchise in general, I'm not sure if it was his leg, but he was severely injured on set, and they had to delay production by a long time until he got better. So, it's good to see, after all the sacrifices he made for this movie and this franchise, that it still is making money. While $24.1 million isn't a whole lot, it's going to come in at number 1 because, as we know, this was the last weekend in January, but January, not a ton of blockbusters coming out. Just 2 more that stand out to me is Jumanji and Greatest Showman, because both were strong word-of-mouth movies that made a lot of money due to word of mouth, and I reiterated myself there, but Jumanji actually, I believe it's in the top 5 of grossing movies in 2017, which
Jumanji?
Yeah, if you had said that...
it's been there for a while. It took over Star Wars.
It's made $824 million worldwide, which is
and I'd say
insane.
Definitely because of the actors in the movie.
For sure. It shows that, Dwayne Johnson still has movie star status and is definitely getting these movies to box office greatness. And a lot of people saying this Jumanji is better than the original, which while I understand the whole nostalgia aspect, but they're saying this one is more like it's more lighthearted, I guess, even though the original is lighthearted, but at times it does take itself a little too seriously. But Greatest Showman, one that I want to talk about, very stoked about this movie because Jumanji came out big and remained strong. Greatest Showman, if you remember when we recapped its opening weekend, it was pretty weak when it first came out. Yeah, it didn't make a ton of money in its opening weekend.
Probably like the reviews and stuff.
Yeah, and mixed with the fact it comes out in December, going up against a Star Wars and a Jumanji. But just going off of it, it made a total of, I'm trying to see what it made in its opening weekend. That can't be right. $8.8 million.
The opening weekend? I feel like it had to be made.
Yeah.
More, right?
I would assume. Unless. Oh, that's because that was the earlier total. That was like during the week. It made $15.5 million in its opening official weekend. But the fact that it's still making $10 million word of mouth really shows that you can market a movie all you want, but at the end of the day, if you want to make money, make a good movie because people will talk about it and it will, remain strong in the top 5.
Definitely.
All right, do we have anything we want to wrap up with? Any notable? I mean, Star Wars: The Last Jedi not being on the top 5, but it's been out for a bit, and honestly, I've talked about it enough that it just the nostalgia kind of wears off a bit, and the last one was only 2 years ago. Yeah, trailer rumored to be coming Monday, as you said.
Monday, I'm just happy that January is over. So the box office is going to get a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Especially with Black Panther coming out.
Oh, yeah. Soon. Oh, man, yeah, Black Panther, I believe it's 2 weeks away from Friday. So, and it's gotten insanely good reviews so far.
It could be the greatest reviewed Marvel movie.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people...
Or at least MCU movie.
That's what a lot of people are saying, for sure.
Marvel movie, who am I kidding?
True. All right, so moving on to our really only news topic of the day is the Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer. This came out yesterday, I believe.
Yesterday.
Yeah, and I was pretty impressed with this trailer, to be honest, because Ant-Man, I feel, it's not a box... I mean, Marvel movies are all kind of box office giants because they're all going to eclipse 500 million worldwide, but no one really thinks of Ant-Man as when you stack up against Captain America and your Infinity Wars and Avengers movies. No one thinks of Ant-Man as competing, but what I like about this is that they're finding innovative ways to keep the audience compelled because Ant-Man is very unique. And they have the ability of like, okay, we have this shrinking and enlarging technology. Let's use that to our advantage. We don't have to make a standard superhero movie. First Ant-Man was a heist movie, and this one looks like it's a bit of an on-the-run.
That's like really good though, because I do think that the superhero genre is getting a little sour. It's becoming a little same old, but MCU still continues to change it up. And Black Panther, which looks so different from a superhero movie, and same thing with this. This looks completely different. This could just be like a spy thriller, if anything. Yeah. It doesn't look like a superhero movie, and that's where they're key. That's where also DC kind of drops off at. Yeah, because like you referenced DC, like all their movies seem to follow a similar tone, while with Marvel, even though they all kind of follow the same lighthearted tone for the most part, they do mix it up with the genre in general. Because as you said, this looks like a spy movie. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, basically a spy, espionage, political thriller movie. 100%.
Thor Ragnarok.
You could watch that movie.
Yeah.
And not need to know anything about the MCU and still enjoy it.
Exactly. Thor Ragnarok was essentially a comedy, if we're being honest, because it wasn't very grounded, and it relied on. While all Marvel movies have humor, and a lot of times they're criticized for it, even though I feel like it's essential to their brand. Thor Ragnarok relied heavily more on it, but that shows that they continue to mix up the genre. As we referenced with Black Panther, looks to be one of the most different Marvel movies with the different technology and the heavy reliance on African culture.
Brand new place. We've not seen anything from Wakanda besides the shots we got in Civil War. So it's going to be very interesting to get out of the same old towns and cities that we've had in previous MCU movies. And
the way they're approaching it with the soundtrack, I know obviously Guardians of the Galaxy is heavily touted for their soundtrack with old 70s and 80s music being compiled onto their soundtrack. But Black Panther, for the first time in a Marvel movie I can remember, has a completely original soundtrack being produced and most of the songs written by Kendrick Lamar. And that kind of shows how they have their ear to the ground when it comes to what's in popular culture. And getting someone like Kendrick Lamar to write original songs and getting other artists on the album shows that they're staying modern. You know, they don't have to be rooted
a lot into this franchise.
Yeah, and while there is a Marvel formula, quote unquote, the formula is a very basic outline.
Yeah, the formula allows for these movies to branch off into different genres.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to get back into the trailer, because I know we kind of went on an MCU tangent, as that kind of happens on these episodes. But favorite shots in the trailer, I'll say mine first. While a lot of people will say, you know, the building shrinking down or the running on the knife, I was most surprised, and I don't know why I attached to it, but the final shot of the Pez dispenser being thrown out the van and then being hit with the enlarging technology. I just love little things like that because it shows how it's something so minuscule, but in the grand scheme, like it shows how they're still finding innovative ways, and it's just funny to see, you know, being chased down, a giant Pez dispenser being thrown at the guy. Reminded me of what was it, the Thomas the Tank Engine in the first Ant-Man.
And, for me, you already said it, the running of the knife.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Oh, that was really cool. Because, we always see in these superhero movies with, you know, these big fights, and it's always guns and, you know, blasters and stuff like that. It's something as simple as throwing a knife, and then, you know, the Wasp just running on the side of it, using her wings as well. And then a little comedy bit after with Michael Douglas and Scott Lang, but really Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas and Scott Lang. But that kind of comedy I don't mind, because that's what Ant-Man is. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's in my opinion the most rooted in reality MCU movie. Yeah. And I know, you know, shrinking and enlarging technology. I say that because maybe not rooted in reality.
Scott Lang feels like a real guy.
Yeah, and most grounded, because the stakes are not end of the world. Yeah. You know,
he was kind of just thrown into it. Like, you think about it, like most other like Tony Stark built it for himself. Captain America signed up for the super soldier technology. He kind of just like, oh, okay, I stole this suit. You're making me wear it now.
Exactly. And one thing I like is that we kind of got a little bit of a backbone of a story with what we're going to get in this movie. And I really like how that's what I love about the MCU at this point, is that they're continuing on the same thread. While Phase 1 and Phase 2, you know, you had your origin stories and you had them kind of split off, and you kind of saw the connection between Winter Soldier and Avengers. But now, like, we have consequences from Civil War that play into Ant-Man. Yeah. I didn't even
his ankle bracelet.
Yeah, I didn't consider the fact that, like, he would be on house arrest because he was imprisoned at the end of Civil War. Which is
interesting, because Infinity War comes out before this, correct?
Yes.
So he's going to be in that?
Yes.
So maybe, like, he gets out of prison and he has to wear those ankle bracelets in order to fight Thanos.
Yeah, and, well, actually, now since you mentioned it, I don't know if he will be in the first Infinity War. I know for sure he'll be in the second one, because there's the set pictures of him.
Yes.
But he wasn't in the Infinity War trailer. And
wasn't on the poster.
Wasn't on the poster. So
he is confirmed in the cast, though.
Yeah, so maybe he'll show up at some point, but it's an interesting point to be brought up, because I don't know what his grand role will be.
Yeah, because he's like,
I feel like
Black Panther and Ant-Man are gonna have to lead the MCU eventually. Captain America and Iron Man are leaving.
I feel like they're gonna hinder more on Panther and Doctor Strange, to be honest.
Panther, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man.
Just because in terms of not only characters, but in terms of actor star power, Cumberbatch and Chadwick Boseman have much more star power than Paul Rudd. Even though I don't fault Paul Rudd, and I do think he can, you know, be up there. But I think he will take a little bit of a backseat, similar to how Thor with Chris Hemsworth. While Chris Hemsworth has become an A-lister, at the beginning, it was really heavily Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr. in the forefront. You know what I mean?
Definitely, yeah.
All right, so any final thoughts on the Ant-Man trailer? I'll just say, personally, I'm very excited for this movie. I think it's going to go under a lot of people's radars because of course, the Infinity